Welcome to If the Public Only Knew, the show that pulls back the curtain on what it really takes to build and lead a business. Host Gary Cinderbrandt sits down with some of today's most dynamic CEOs, founders, and leaders to dig into their origin stories, hard-earned lessons, and the missteps that nearly derailed it all. These are unfiltered, no-hype conversations designed to inspire, challenge, and fuel your own journey. Now here's your host, Gary Cinderbrandt.
Welcome back to If the Public Only Knew. I'm your host, Gary Cinderbrandt. Today we're joined by Edward Mack Francis, management consultant, executive coach, and someone that has been through, I would say, the full evolution, where they started out in one area and ended up someplace else. For those of you that think in terms of, are coaches valuable? Can coaches make a difference in our lives? I'd like you to think about the highest performing athletes that you know and ask yourselves, where would they be without a coach? Oftentimes in executive coaching, we think in terms of someone that borrows your watch, tells you what time it is, and then sells it back to you. In reality, the job of an executive coach goes much more deeper than that. Oftentimes just helping us organize thoughts that might be basically clogging up our mind, preventing us from using the best parts of who we are that got us where we want to be to kind of unlock what's there. Edward, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Gary.
So, Edward, let's go back a little bit. I've yet to meet anyone in the coaching area, management consulting area, that comes to it right out of school. We come to it usually from our own personal experiences, no matter what domain we came up in. And it's kind of a dawning recognition because when we start in that first career job, whatever it is, it's not something we really have in mind. It's usually something we spot with a need to fill. Walk me back a little bit. And let's start with high school. Where did you go to high school?
I went to high school in Enfield, North Carolina, the mighty,
Okay.
mighty Wildcats.
Okay. And from there, how about undergrad?
Undergrad at North Carolina Central University
Okay.
in Durham, North Carolina, a very large HBCU in Durham.
Okay. And then you've done some graduate work as well. And where did that
Yes.
take place?
Here in Atlanta, Augusta University, and also did some work at Emory University as well, um, for MBA, doctorate, and various certificates around coaching and psychoanalytic for clinical analysis.
So you hold your doctorate in business administration. I noticed your dissertation looked pretty interesting, as dissertations would go. Um, was this your desired pathway when first of all, did you go into the corporate world out of undergrad, grad? Where'd your first corporate engagement occur?
It occurred in Atlanta. I went to work for a bank, a well-known bank that had a lot of flair and flavor to it. And young guy went to work on their management training program with lots of other smart people and really enjoyed it, a great experience. And while I was there, I bought some banking software. And I bought this banking software and enjoyed that experience and that process. And then later went to work for the company that sold us the software, IBM.
Okay. Now, when you went inside IBM, did you go in from a sales perspective or a management position, or what was your
I
role?
went in as a professional hire, which had some level of zest to it, and started out as an individual contributor on a team doing one of the most entrepreneurial things that IBM has ever did. I worked with resellers which would be synonymous to franchisees, helping companies invest in IBM for their business to then go and do the things that IBM did. It got really popular back in the 80s. Many companies, when your dad, my dad bought a Cadillac, back in the day, they probably bought it from General Motors, but now you buy a Cadillac, you buy it from a dealer. So that's what computers were doing. So if you want to buy one, you bought it from a dealer, and I helped set up those dealer networks for software. But
And okay.
IBM was going through some changes, had an infrastructure of double-digit growth, yet was losing money. So a franchise and reseller network became real popular strategy to decrease the cost of sales.
What years were you at IBM?
From 1987 to 2010.
So were you there when they opted not to buy MS-DOS from Bill Gates?
I remember that. Yes, I do. I heard the stories about that. I read about that, and that was very interesting. Back then IBM used to measure itself by itself.
Right.
So in terms of making decisions, we were pretty one-sided focused inward.
I saw the original estimate when IBM published how many personal computers they thought they would be, charting it out going forward, which is why they opted to license MS-DOS instead of buying it outright from Gates. And I'm not sure what happened to the people that made that decision,
Yeah.
but talk about a game changer.
Yes.
So you were actually at IBM during a period of really rapid expansion on the hardware side, and I would assume commensurately on the software side as well.
And just how the whole IT business was structured. It went from hardware centric to services centric. Margins began to be in services and software and less in hardware. Hardware was really what held the relationship together so that you could sell software and services.
I'm trying to recall what were some of the IBM software products?
A lot of middleware when it
Okay.
really became popular. There was a thing when it came out, boy, it was selling like hotcakes called WebSphere. WebSphere allowed you to access your legacy applications through the internet. So you could get to your legacy applications from anywhere. And boy, that was selling like hotcakes. This was the early days of cybersecurity.
Yeah.
The early days of cybersecurity. And then later that caught fire. So a lot of cybersecurity, middleware, storage, disaster recovery, think software that applications ride on, not
Right.
payroll, but how can you access the payroll?
Not necessarily going to go in and build a spreadsheet or a Word document.
No, not that kind of software. It's called middleware.
Understood. Understood. I was when I was at Merrill Lynch during that period, right around 99 to 2001, Merrill was looking to rebuild all of their advisor workstations. They were using something, they went into something called Trusted Global Advisor,
Mm-mm.
and they were heavily involved with IBM and completely resistant to doing anything on the internet. But
Mm.
they did have a lot of middleware which could access legacy documents through their own intranet.
Yeah,
So they may have bought that right from you as far as or you may have been
yeah,
involved in that
yeah. It
sale.
was it was it was big stuff. That cybersecurity, disaster storage and recovery, a lot of manufacturing, supply chain management.
Yeah,
Here again, though, the middleware that the applications ride on. Big business leads to consulting. A lot of it, you had bought products and then sold products. Bought
yeah,
products was when somebody knew what they wanted to buy and they just wanted to buy it at the best price. And then sold products is when they really didn't know it and you could get a consulting contract around it. So IBM was doing bought products and sold products, but a lot of those bought products all went to the resellers then. The
understood. It's
big
interesting.
resellers and the big VARs and VADs did a lot of bought products where you could get a really smart person on the phone who essentially say, I don't know, talking to the customer, I don't know what you want to buy, but before you buy it, call me because I'm going to sell it to you at the best price.
Who were your competitors back then in that market?
And the bought products, and bought versus
In in both, in middleware in general.
middleware, oh, you had a lot of people in it. The standard ones you would imagine. Microsoft was there. Um, really Oracle, some of the larger ones. Again, this was like really ahead of the big cybersecurity push, but those are really two of the big. And then there were some smaller ones that came along as well. But what IBM did very clever was we would partner with someone who had a real niche understanding of hospitals and go with them and get them to sell IBM hardware and IBM services to go along with their expertise and relationships. So where IBM didn't have the manpower to create those relationships, we partnered with resellers that did have the relationships because that's where, people started really buying IT differently. It wasn't just your big IT people buying it over the phone. It was really the guy who ran the line of business. And when he ran the line of business, the VP of manufacturing or the VP of hospital operations, they're the ones who were buying software. And so they needed relationships. And so to get those relationships at a good cost, IBM partnered with smaller companies who could go in and could sell $100,000 system and make a nice margin. Where if IBM sold that $100,000 system, they end up losing money with all the people
Yeah.
we had to fly in to do it.
So you had a 23-year career with a top company. Was something scratching at you? Was there something that wasn't necessarily ringing the bell as much as it used to that caused you to
IBM was a
start
great
thinking about other
experience.
things?
IBM didn't work for everybody, but it worked for me.
Okay.
It was a really good experience, but mother and father were educators. My mother was an award-winning artist who taught third grade. My father was an educator, worked in the high schools. And so I grew up around coaching types of stuff, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to do that. And my father's father was a very successful farmer, an employer, one of the largest landholders in that county in North Carolina, well known. And so, so I came from that background of, you know, doing good and doing well. That's what we always wanted to do. Wanted to do good and wanted to do well. So, and even at IBM, as my hair began to turn white, kids would come to me and talk and want to know this and that. And I began to realize early on, when people come to you wanting help, there are those who have a target, and typically you can help them or try to help them. But then there are those who don't have a target, help me figure out what I want to do when I grow up. They're a little
Mm-hmm.
harder to help. So I did that and enjoyed it. But I think it was my choice to go back to school to get my MBA. IBM was nice enough to pay for that. Did not pay for my doctorate, but that was when I began to understand experiential learning. I became intrigued with that bridge between competency and real world practice. Not just understanding the competency, but how does it really play out in the real world? That bridge. And that bridge can be coaching, leadership development, mentoring. I began to have a passion for that bridge, that real world experience of the competency. As an example, let's say the competency of informed judgment, being smart. How does that play out? People gather their data. Data is important if you want to make a good decision. Your experience with that data. But what I began to do research on was something I call fact-based intuition. What's your intuition about this, about the data, and about the your experience with the data? And
Just lost you. You're back.
and, and can you teach that? Can you teach someone the value and how to use fact-based intuition? So you put that on the table as a factor in making decisions, just as equal as data and experience. But your factor-based intuition, what does it feel like? And your experiences with that. Uh, and there again, we're talking about competency to real world practice. Another one is trust, earning trust. Can you teach someone how to earn trust? Or is that something you learn as a kid around the dinner table, or you learn through experiences? Well, I showed that that can be taught. You can actually teach someone how to earn trust and measure their development in the process of learning it or their lack of development. So I began to really get interested in what's called experiential learning, that bridge between competency and real world practice. And I developed
So,
about 12 of them that when it's needed, I coach around them,
okay.
those competencies. So passion for the future. Can you teach passion for the future? Well, I did a study, I did the research, and yes, that can be taught. Someone who does not have a passion for the future, if they are so incented, you can teach them passion for the future or lack thereof, or they don't have it, which means maybe you're hiring the right people in the first place. So that's how I got started. Experiential learning, um, that bridge between competency and real world practice, and a person's own self discovery in that process. Asking the questions, creating the actions, the examples so that they encounter self discovery.
Did
That's
you
how I got.
find as you were growing up, because it sounds like mom and dad were pretty much great role models for you. Did you find you were kind of discovering, let's say, their quiet secret formula as individuals as you were learning about experiential learning, as you were learning about self-discovery? Or did you look back at parts of your childhood and realize that you were living with folks like that along the way?
Yeah, yeah. You know, my mom, I mean, she really was a very stimulating teacher because she was an artist as well. She won awards, local awards for her art. And in her school, they had this thing called Bulletin Board of the Month. So the question was, who's going to come in second? Because we know Miss Francis is always going to win Bulletin Board of the Month. And so it was that stimulation, the stimulation that I got from them about life, about learning, about I played basketball and I made good grades, and so that was and that was a great high school. That was great high school for me. So
So it sounds like, especially with the background you grew up with, um, having artistic skill is just at the heart of creativity and free thinking, where you'll allow anything to come in for consideration and you'll kind of indulge those random thoughts and maybe something works, maybe something doesn't. But I think what I'm detecting is there's a bit of a correlation between how your mom looked at the world and how you started to realize you could look at the world in a similar fashion, but off in a different direction.
that's true, but I think what it really it normalized the creative experience.
I'm with you. I got it.
It
That
it
makes
wasn't
sense.
something that you had to somebody said, what is art? Art is this thing that they aspire to and reaching for. Well, art is normality. It's the creative process. It's that thing that summons you to reflect and express in many ways. It's a summoning. It summons your thoughts and your desires, and so there was a normalization around the creative experience, the artistic experience that really made it powerful.
So when you come out of IBM, you're going to get your MBA. Did IBM require you to come back after your MBA?
IBM did.
Okay. Was there a sense at that point in time that you were destined for something else after your MBA?
Yes. Yeah, I would, yeah, the gate was open.
So they may have regretted sending you.
The
Um,
gate, I didn't get a promotion that I thought I should have gotten, and I had a mentor and all of that. And he said, well, we need to fight back. And knowing how to fight back is really important, in a corporate setting, but you do need to fight back. So let's don't pretend that nothing has happened. You didn't get this, but we're not going to pretend that nothing happened. So we fought back, didn't get the promotion, but they said, okay, we'll put you in it. We will get you in MBA school and we'll support you in MBA school. And oh my gracious, I was upset I didn't get the promotion, saying all kinds of things that were just, off the wall. But yeah, so I got a chance to read, write. The classes were really interesting. I mean, classes are pretty good. You read a few books, write a few papers, take a few tests, create a relationship with the instructor, and you can get through that. So I did fine until the dissertation came along. That dissertation was very difficult. But I've always been able to create relationships with my professors and with my instructors. And when you create the relationship, that helps you to learn what they're going to put on the test.
yeah.
You get to know them and you hear their voices, you hear the intonations, what's important to them. And so it helps you with studying. So I did well in school, made great relationships with my professors, and they're the ones that talked me into getting the doctorate. So,
And then you knew, it seems like coming through the MBA, you knew there was more to be done, that you weren't at your highest best application yet.
yeah, there was more stimulation, more creativity. I liked I liked understanding the brain, neuroplasticity, how the brain creates neurons, and how the brain's major function is to protect the body. But in doing so, it has a negative bias. The brain will often cause you to think that things are worse than they are. Often, not all the time, but often. And so you got to be able to manage that brain and say, wait a minute, no, I'm not, I'm going to run this show, not the brain running the show. So you got to step outside that brain and you understand what's happening in that prefrontal cortex, how it likes to be filled with information, any kind
Yeah.
of information. But in filling it makes it more difficult to vision and do innovation and be creative. Now, we all know people who carry the world on their shoulders and yet they're still very creative, but that's probably not the best way to do it. But it can
I
be done.
I I think you are spot on. I'll give something similar in my own personal experience. I live in Colorado, and I still do my consulting work, but I also teach skiing at Vail. And one of the fundamental tenets that we have to teach very smart people who are successful is that as you're coming down a mountain, all of the safety and all the ability to control yourself is in front of you, but your brain tells you that the ground is closer behind you.
Mm.
So you sit back, which basically disengages the skis and opens up the risk of all sorts of bad things happening. And I've dealt with extraordinarily smart people that I can be standing literally right next to them skiing, and I'm telling them what to do, and their brain just won't let them. They just think if they sit down. So to me, it's like a combination of the lizard brain taking over. They're trying to think through solving the problem, such as they stare at their skis, and I'm like, it's not the skis' fault. I mean, do what we're asking you to do, it'll work out. But it almost becomes a sense of cognitive dissonance where they're fully aware they're doing the wrong thing, but sure enough, they'll go out and do the same wrong thing over and over and over again.
That brain, boy, that brain, that brain. I mean, that brain is really something, man. You really need to, and I do this in my coaching. when it's one of the outcomes that we are pursuing. That is how to really manage that brain rather than that brain running you. Because when that brain runs you, you can end up in all kinds of things. And we see it all over the place.
So one of the questions that I use in the work that I do with advisors who are, if you took an MRI of an advisor's brain, you'd basically see a bunch of feral squirrels because we're just juggling things all the time. We're juggling 150 clients, we're juggling investment decisions, we're juggling geopolitical stuff. You've got to be, I think, a little crazy to succeed as an advisor. But if you have a good one, never get rid of them because it's a wonderful job if you do it right. But when I sit with bringing on a new client, and it's not the money, they're all making a lot of money. My question would be, I want you to complete this sentence for me. It would be great if I leave it to them.
Mm.
And not surprisingly, it starts off with the smallest little things. If I had a better assistant, if compliance wasn't so difficult to work with, it's all these things that are just killing them.
Oh, yeah.
And then I say, well, let's look at the world in a larger fashion. How many people are enjoying enriched lives today? How many families have you helped? How many people would directly credit you with improving the quality of their health, their wealth, and their life? It's in the hundreds. And you're thinking about the fact that somebody in compliance is giving you a hard time. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, you're right. Because to me, that's just wasted. But as you say, that brain gets a hold of you. So how do we break that out? How do we consciously allow ourselves to get away from that, not just in the back end of a coaching session, but consistently, habitually?
Yeah, yeah, because no matter what we do during the coaching session, it still involves accountability.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, first of all, you have to be coachable. Everybody just isn't coachable, and then you incented to do it. So there are techniques that work very well with that. Um, I had a fellow I was coaching, a chap from India, ran a huge organization, um, dynamic scheduling, dynamic daily targets, and he was really feeling kind of burned, a little frustrated, and wanted to really get more control over his prefrontal cortex and his brain. And to make a long story short, the way we did it was we got him to the point that every day, for a short period of time, he was able to call mom and dad or one of his brothers back in India. And this is a guy with a schedule that's just two assistants, just really big time guy. But when he conquered being able to call mom or dad, he realized then that he was running things. And that gave him just tremendous enjoyment. So it wasn't a big thing. He didn't have to climb Mount Everest. He just had to take the time every day to call mom. And mom would ask him, how did you sleep last night? And whatever, and the things that mothers care about. But he found so much accomplishment and fulfillment in not only figuring out that he should do that, but in achieving that. Being able to call mom and dad every day.
You think he's still doing
I don't know. I don't know. I'll have dinner with him in late February, and that's one of the things I'm sure will come up.
it? I think, as we both know, um, oftentimes you can deliver a great message, you can have great receptivity with someone who is coachable, but it doesn't change overnight. There are habits that have to be reshaped. There has to be positive reinforcement for whatever those new activities are. I hope this guy's still calling mom and dad and
Well,
his brothers.
that's one thing too, is that it has to be, you got to have the incentive to do it and the fulfillment in doing it. Because for quite a bit of it, you can be pretty successful without doing it.
Yeah.
You can have a level. Now, you may not be achieving your potential. You may not be as they say, when we talk about equanimity, equanimity means a lot of things to a lot of people. But when we talk about it in coaching, it typically means achieving that fulfillment. Equanimity is handling things when things get rocky. Well, the rockiness of you making sure it is the fulfillment that you're pursuing, as opposed to maybe some tool, the big house, the title, the money, whatever, what is truly the fulfillment. And it can be all of those things. But so equanimity is one of the ways by really beginning to understand this whole notion of fulfillment. And what's that old saying? In the South, we got this saying they say in the church, and they say, hell is when God gives you something you thought you wanted.
I know you've worked with entrepreneurs, you've worked with business folks of all kind of sizes and styles. In the entrepreneur's journey, there's so much uncertainty. Invariably, perhaps they've left a job that is they're great at, it's not fulfilling. They go out and they do something else, they lose their work friends, they lose their health insurance, they lose all sorts of things, and they're out there building something from scratch, and it's hard. It most certainly is. Let's talk about the ones that you've run into that have had that level of success as measured externally.
Mhm.
Do you find that there is some inverse proportionality between the success of the entrepreneur and the shrinking lack of fulfillment along the lines of that quote you just gave me from church?
Mhm.
Um, Hell is when God gives you something you thought you wanted.
Mhm.
Do
Mhm.
you notice that? And if so, is there kind of a tipping point or a fulcrum where you have to pay attention?
I think so. There clearly is. One of the things too is also to go through and get a clear understanding of passion versus what you're good at. A lot of times it's what you're good at that can become a passion, as opposed to you seeking this passion for what it is that you want to do. So, what are you good at? A lot of them are good at negotiating a deal, good at selling, good at creating back office, good at vision. And then then as you roll that out, it becomes passion. A lot of them simply get started, and as they are starting, are able to look across the way and say, oh, that's where I need to be over there. But they would never see it if they hadn't started, even in the wrong direction.
Are
So
you
getting
talking about
started,
yourself?
that is, yes, yes. So that is
Okay.
critical. So getting started without the perfect plan, I mean, because that smartness a lot of times is hindsight, the fact that you
Sure.
started. And
If
I
you would
find
have
and I find
received,
that with entrepreneurs,
okay,
getting started, something that they're pretty good at, and then creating the passion and the and of course putting the money in around it.
if you had gotten that promotion at IBM, where would you be?
I'd probably still be there, man, still there trying to get another one. And IBM, now IBM, I traveled the world. Uh, you know, IBM benefits were really good to me and my family. Um, so there's a lot of smart people.
Sure.
I mean, I really was, and I found I liked smart people. They were just fun to listen to. I have one of the things that I talk about when I coach is called being more interested than interesting. I felt I was nowhere near as interesting as these people, but I sure as hell was interested.
That is one of the signs of true intelligence, the ability to listen, no matter who's in the room. If you think you're the smartest person in the room, go find another room. And I would credit a lot of my own success to my ability to listen with intention and ask questions without fear. I didn't care what someone thought. I don't care if they thought it was a stupid question. I could have cared less because I figured, maybe somebody else doesn't have the guts to ask. But if I wasn't sure, I'd ask. And if I still didn't understand the answer, I'd ask again. And that always served me well. I was always interested in absorbing more information than I was giving it out.
And Gary, it sounds like you're good at it too, because when you really get good, you begin to key in on what's not being said, as much as what as much as what they're saying. The behavior, the
You are
consequences,
you
the
are very
body
good at
language.
this.
But when
Yeah,
you begin to focus on what's not active listening,
I
and you're
will tell
not
you,
you
you are so spot on, Edward. When I would bring on a new client, and what most folks would do just to kind of make their numbers or make their quota, whatever it was, is if you could sign your name and you had a pulse, they'd bring you on as a client. I approached it that it was going to be a joint decision. That if I didn't get a good vibe in talking to you, I really didn't want to bring you on board because I'm going to make a commitment. I'm not going to really feel the energy to keep. So in every meeting that I would go into, I wouldn't bring a pitch book. I'd have some charts and a yellow legal pad, and I would just start recording information. And before I would conclude or make a determination, my question would always be, is there anything we haven't talked about that you think I should know? And man, you couldn't believe some of the things that would come out because you just kind of give them permission and I'm letting them know I'm sensing there's more here, but I don't have it yet without accusing them of withholding information. And it's and I was fascinated by it. And the other thing that would always notice was the more opportunity you give someone to tell you their story, the more affinity they have for the listener.
oh, absolutely.
Um, I think that was kind of the
General,
background of this
generally, yeah,
podcast.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Everybody they know knows their story.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and there were
I
times if
mean,
I didn't,
it's a
go
way
ahead.
of saying not only do we have these, how we're going to measure this relationship, but you know, you're going to see that I care.
I'll share something else with you that you mentioned a little while ago. I found out learning the math and the discipline and the science of managing other people's assets requires discipline, diligence, paying attention, reading what's there, figuring out what's not there, but there's a process to it. And frankly, it's very difficult for the individual investor because of the emotional bias that's involved. For a professional, it's just another day that ends in Y. That's what we do. And oftentimes, the job of a high-end advisor is to tell people, no, don't do that. That no, you're not no, no, and no, which I would say more than yes. If somebody would call, but why don't we do that? No, we're not doing that.
Mhm.
So what I found was that most advisors would only reach out to their clients when there was something to do in the account, which automatically would raise the blood pressure on one side because it's possibly a confrontational conversation. I used to make at least 6 calls per year that were not market related, where I would call you up and say, "Hey, Edward, it's Gary. How's life, man? How you doing? How's your family? How's mom and dad? What's going on? How's your career going?" I just was interested in what you were doing. And what I found was, A, I never lost clients, but I made a lot of good friends. And more often than not, I would find introductions from those people who felt so comfortable that they knew I was always going to be there for them. Hey, can you talk to my brother? Can you talk to my son-in-law? And what I found was they were the most pleasurable calls I could make.
And see what you're creating is when issues do come up or decisions do come up, we are making the decision
Yes, absolutely
because you
correct.
have invested the time. It's not you coming at from one perspective, they from another. It's we are going about this jointly. You've created the we.
Yes. And I
That's
think that
that's actually clever.
I kind of stumbled into it, frankly. I was lucky because early in my career, I was very successful at a young age, although I shouldn't have been. But I would open up any account I could. And in between my second and third year, I had a very smart manager who came and said that he wanted me to give him half my accounts. And I thought he was out of his mind. And he explained to me, you're just going to keep opening up. You've got 150 now, you'll have 250 next year. And at some point, you're just going to burn out. He goes, I want you to put all these accounts, lay them out on the floor, and I want you to make believe you can only take 75 people with you on the journey. Who are you going to pick?
Mm.
So I picked 75. The other 75 were well cared for. And all of a sudden, I came back in the next day. I was panicked. I mean, it wasn't half my business, but it was half my clients. And I realized right away I can't lose any of these people. So I started talking to them more frequently, and they started introducing me to other people just like them. And my business literally exploded. Never
Wow.
cold called, never did email, no seminars.
Wow.
I just engaged with people I cared about. And as you said, it's a we instead of a us versus them. Um,
Also, it sounds like to me that's one of the first things that we sort of work around when it is a desired outcome of coaching, because I take each client differently. But it sounds like authenticity. You're being authentic to you. Authenticity is so underrated. I mean, I coach guys at the end, near the end of their careers, looking back on their careers and have real big questions about things. And when they realize those questions are about their own authenticity, they're not, they have mixed feelings about that. They're not happy guys. And the people who really catch that unhappiness are sometimes the people that are closest to them,
it's true. Um,
wives or children.
yep.
And this guy is just not a happy camper. I don't care how many motorcycles he's got. I don't care how many Corvettes and how often he plays golf. He's not a happy camper because he looks back over that career and that misplaced authenticity. He's not, it's not, he doesn't feel good about it.
Edward, you're a lot more than an executive coach, in my opinion. You really do understand, I think, at a pretty deep level, the underlying motivations of not just success, but success is defined by happiness and authenticity and self-satisfaction. I can't thank you enough for joining me today. I could talk about this all day. I think the brain is an amazing instrument. I think we limit ourselves by default almost and not recognizing what I like to refer to of the power of the possible. And I think that's what a good coach does. And I think the people you work with are very lucky to have you. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Been chatting with Edward Mack Francis, all around smart dude. Um, we have a lot of executives that listen here, I think, but all things considered, I feel a bit smarter and more informed for having talked to him. And even though we're in somewhat similar businesses, I learned a lot and I really appreciate it. You can find Edward at edwardmackfrancis.com. You can also reach out to him on LinkedIn. Be well worth your time. And listening to If the Public Only Knew, this is Gary Cinderbrand. We'll see you on the next show.
Thanks for tuning in to If the Public Only Knew. Don't forget to follow the show and share it with anyone who's ready for the real raw stories behind the business successes. Join Gary next time for another powerful conversation that will leave you inspired and ready to take action.